Let us bow our heads. Most eternal God, we thank you for this opportunity that we can come together. We ask that you would bless us, the presenters, and all that is said and done today. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to welcome you today to this event sponsored by the Foundation for Economic Education here in conjunction and in collaboration with the Nassau Institute and the School of Business at the College of the Bahamas and its Student Economic Society. We welcome you. This morning, we'll begin by remarks from the President of the College of the Bahamas Economic Society, Mr. Jeremiah Taylor, and that will be followed by remarks from the Dean for the Faculty of Business, Ms. Romelda Moxie, and then our Project Manager, Ms. Sarah Morrison, will come and proceed with the event. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me, Mr. Jeremiah Taylor, a student in the School of Business and the interim president of the College of Bahamas Economic Society. Mr. Taylor.
Morning. My name is Jeremiah Taylor. I'm the interim president of the College of the Bahamas Economic Society. The purpose of the Economic Society of the College of the Bahamas is to provide a forum to raise awareness and inform the student body and the general community of relevant economic issues. Our goals and objectives are to provide a forum for students to learn about, discuss, and debate issues from an economic perspective, to encourage students to get involved with the economic process in the Bahamas, to have open dialogue with students and business decision makers, to provide a platform for students to voice their opinion and creative solutions for domestic economic issues, to foster camaraderie among economic majors and the general student body. This morning we are pleased to work with the Nassau Institute, and we invite you to come out to our meetings, which will be held every other Thursday at B3 at 2 p.m. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I didn't identify myself. I'm Daniel Thompson, Chair for the School of Business. And our next speaker is Ms. Romelda Moxie, the Acting Dean for the Faculty of Business. Ms. Moxie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. Ms. Sarah Morrison, Project Manager from the Foundation for Economic Education. Mr. Rick Lowe, President of the Nassau Institute. Presenters, Ms. Margaret Wade, Mr. Isaac Morehouse, and Mr. Michael Strawn. Mr. Daniel Thompson, Chair of the School of Business. Mr. Randy Forbes, Head of Department of the Banking and Economics area in the School of Business. Faculty, staff, students, guests, good morning. My task this morning is not a difficult one. It is simply to bring remarks on behalf of the College of the Bahamas and the School of Business. As I looked at today's theme, the power of entrepreneurship, I recall that it has always been my contention, and hence I have articulated on numerous occasions, that it is the entrepreneur that is truly responsible for the economic growth and development of a country, and not the government. Entrepreneurs are the driving forces behind any successful economy, and by extension, successful economies are imbued with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are risk seekers. They are visionaries. They are creative. They are dedicated. They are determined and are committed to seeing their vision to fruition. They are driven. They have a passion for something, even if that something is a desire to contribute to the society in which they live or the world. That something is what drives them and gives them the impetus to continue even when there appears to be no light at the end of the tunnel, or their significant other spouses, family, friends, or colleagues seem no longer to believe in them nor their driver. or their bankers are no longer supportive of their something. They are not deterred by the actions or inactions of others, but are motivated by that something. It is that something that drives them, that keeps them awake day and night, with the requisite energy, determination, commitment, and dedication to continue. When one takes into consideration the amount of time an entrepreneur remains engaged in the development and execution of an idea, product, or service to see it to an end, one can only conclude that entrepreneurs epitomizes what Malcolm Gladwell refers to in his book as outliers. Countries that are desirous of being successful in terms of economic growth and development, should start by developing a culture of entrepreneurship. Allow the spirit of entrepreneurship to undergird every aspect of the society and develop favorable policies that encourages and values the entrepreneur. Government should celebrate the accomplishments of the entrepreneur, encourage society to innovate, to be creative, and to follow the something that is driving them. Such interventions would undoubtedly fuel the instruments of job creation and poverty reduction. Entrepreneurship is a vital stimulant of economic growth and the creator of new job opportunities. The entrepreneurs views changes and challenges as opportunities to create, to innovate, to satisfy a need, to provide a product or service or fulfilling, or providing customer demand that is desirous of being satisfied. Today, all of you would be the beneficiary of hearing from persons who embody the spirit of entrepreneurship. They are intimately aware and may have experienced the advantages and disadvantages of entrepreneurship. You will hear from Isaac Morehouse on what entrepreneurship is, and the virtues of entrepreneurship from Maggie Wade, on the importance of entrepreneurship, and Michael Strong on entrepreneurship in action. During the question and answer period, I invite you not to leave with burning questions. Ask those questions until you obtain the requisite response. Who better to ask than those who have been the beneficiary of the experience and are responding from a position of knowledge and experience? I invite all of you to embrace the opportunity and engage the dialogue. On behalf of the College of the Bahamas, I wish to express our sincerest gratitude to all of you who are responsible for organizing this event. And I wish the participant a successful day of engagement. And like a colleague has penned, and I quote, "We anticipate an exciting and informative event." Thank you all very much, and best wishes for a successful seminar on the power of entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much, Madam Dean. Thank you very much. Change, innovation, creativity, changing mindset. Over the course of this day, you're going to hear a lot of talk about those concepts and those terms. I wish to remind you that during the break and when we leave, during the break that you would exit at this end because lunch will be served. So I'll ask you to exit over to my left. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, as we say, I'd like to invite Sarah Morrison, the project manager for FEE, the Foundation for Economic Education. She will now come to continue with the rest of today's events. Let's give her a hand as she comes.
Good morning. African response. As you said, my name is Sarah Morrison. I work for FEE, or the Foundation for Economic Education, and we're really excited that all of you have chosen to spend your Friday with us. I can guarantee that it's going to be worth your time because this lineup of speakers that we have is definitely one of the best programs that I've ever been to. So thank you, and I'm really excited to hear you guys' questions and your participation throughout today. I want to tell you a little bit about FEE, but before I do, I just want to extend another thank you to our partners. This event would not have been possible without the Nassau Institute and without the College of Bahamas, specifically the business school. So thank you for everything that you guys have done in helping make this a reality. So a little bit about FEE. First of all, if you want to connect with us, if you want to learn more about us, we're on social media. So we have a great website, fee.org. If you really enjoy reading different articles that connect business to what's going on in the world, we have a lot of great content. And then we're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So would welcome you guys to like us, follow us, just get involved with us in that way. We're hoping to get some great photos from this event, and you guys might show up on our Instagram, and basically that means be Instagram famous. So get excited about that. So what I like to tell people that we do is two main buckets of things. The first of all being educational programs. So we have two types of programs. One is in person, which is obviously what this is. During the fall and spring semesters, we go to different colleges and high schools, bring in speakers, and put on a one-day event on different themes such as entrepreneurship. And then during the summer, we have longer programs, about 3 or 4 days, where students come in and they stay the night, they eat meals together, and it's just a much more community building setting, and you get to go a lot deeper into the topics that you are exploring. The other type of programs we have are more self-study. So if you go to our website, fee.org, we have an entire section called courses. And if any of you are interested in entrepreneurship and want to learn more about it, we have an entire Economics of Entrepreneurship course that you can go through 8 different modules, self-study. You could do it with a group of friends. Maybe the Economics Club wants to do it together. And we also have Economics in One Day. So if you guys are excited and want to share these ideas with other people, we have this ready-to-go kit program for you guys to use for other audiences. The other main bucket of what we do is educational resources. So those of you who got here early definitely got to see our big stack of books that has now dwindled down to nothing. But we have books, pamphlets, flyers. We also have a ton of information on our website. So if you didn't get a copy of Economics, the One Lesson today, do not fear, we have it for PDF download on our website, and you can get that for free, along with some other really great pieces. So again, I would encourage you to check out our website because we love providing educational content to other people, especially students. We're going to have a really great program today, and just a couple of housekeeping things, one of which being after Isaac, our first speaker, we're going to come down the aisles and pass out these surveys. So we do these programs, like I said, throughout the year, but we change them constantly based on the feedback that we're getting from students. So please be honest, please tell us if something is terrible, and then we won't keep doing it. And we also, of course, love hearing what you're enjoying as well. So we'll be giving out the surveys after the break, after the first lecture. And just before you leave today, please turn that in. We're going to consider that your ticket to get your certificate of attendance for those of you who are interested in getting that. So please fill out your survey because we really value your feedback. All right, so now I'm going to stop talking and introduce our first speaker, who I'm sure you're much more interested in hearing from than from me. Our first speaker is Isaac Morehouse. He's an entrepreneur, thinker, and communicator dedicated to the relentless pursuit of freedom and an advocate of self-directed learning and living. He's the founder and CEO of Praxis, and he writes and speaks and teaches on entrepreneurship, economics, education, philosophy, freedom, communication skills, and how to change the world. So please join me in welcoming Isaac Morehouse.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to everybody here, Nassau Institute, College of the Bahamas, FEE. Now, Sarah, you should know this by now. I have a rule that I ask people when they're introducing me, that they have 3 things they have to do. They've got to be short. She was pretty short. It was a short bio. You don't actually have to be short. The bio has to be short. They have to be funny. Now, I don't know how funny that was. and they don't have to be true. So you can make up anything you want about me when you introduce me. But all of the things that Sarah said were true, so I'm a little disappointed. I like to hear what people will come up with. All right, what is entrepreneurship? Well, as you can see, an entrepreneur is just a business person who wears a t-shirt instead of a suit, right? Isn't that the distinction? No, it's not. But I do like to try to break the rules with the dress code. So let me ask you guys, do you guys drink? I mean, like alcoholic beverages? Is that okay? You don't have to lie. You're not going to get in trouble. It's not a sting operation. What's a popular drink here? What's the drink of the Bahamas? Kalik? Okay, I had a couple of those last night. Just a couple. I'm pretty small. If I had more than a couple, I'd be passed out somewhere. What about like a mixed drink? Is there a cocktail that's popular? I heard a lot of different mumbles. Bahama Mama, did somebody say? Sky juice? What is that? What's in it? Okay, because everyone's like, just try it. Don't ask, just try it. Okay, so I'm assuming this is the case for Sky Juice. What do you need to make this drink work? I'm assuming it has to be cold, right? What do you need to make it cold? Oh, wrong one. Yes. Yeah, you need ice. Now, this seems like a really small thing because we all take it for granted. I mean, all of the drinks, we're staying at Compass Point, and there's a nice bar there. All the drinks that they make, almost all of them use ice. And even the beer is in a refrigerated, it's cold. You don't want to drink it warm. 100 years ago, that was not possible. If you haven't noticed, I just noticed, the Bahamas is pretty warm. And things don't freeze here. There's no ice. So you can't have any cold beverages. You can't have food that will keep unless it's heavily preserved or salted or something, in a place where it's warm all year round. That was the case for pretty much all of human history. If you live in a warm place, you can't have cold things. Until about 100 years ago, there was a crazy guy named Frederick Tudor. He was a young guy. He was from Boston. And he came down to Charleston, South Carolina, where I live, to visit someone. And it's very hot in Charleston. It's not dissimilar from here. Hot and humid. And they were drinking tea, sweet tea, which in Charleston is 90% sugar. He thought, man, it's so hot out. Wouldn't it be nice if this beverage was cold? And in Boston, where he's from, every winter, things freeze. There's lots of ice. And sometimes in Boston, people would cut the ice up and they would store it, and it would last for maybe a month or two into the spring, early summer. And he thought, what if I could bring ice down here? I want to do that. Now, everybody called him crazy, because for thousands of years, all of human history, you just know you can't have ice in a place where it's 90 or 100 degrees. That's Fahrenheit. You guys use Celsius here? Yeah, I don't know what it would be in Celsius, 12, 20, 50, I don't know. I was in my room trying to do the air conditioning, and I was like, 16 degrees? Well, it's below freezing in here. But anyway, so he was convinced that he could make this happen. So he actually got a bunch of people to loan him money, and he filled up a ship in the winter. He cut up a bunch of ice in ponds in Boston, and he filled up a ship, and he was trying to bring it down to the Caribbean. Anybody want to guess what happened? It melted. Yeah. He lost, in today's dollars, about $1 million. The whole thing was a disaster. It all melted like everybody told him it would. He didn't make it there with his cargo. He actually spent time in debtor's prison, because back in those days, if you owed people money, they would throw you in debtor's prison. Pretty harsh. He had basically an emotional breakdown, a nervous breakdown at some point, but he was still obsessed with this idea. He spent a decade, actually more than a decade, over 10 years, trying and trying again, convincing people this time he would get it right. Finally, after 10 and a half years, he delivered a shipment of ice from Boston down to the Caribbean. He had figured out the solution, and it was something really, really simple. Another thing that was happening in Boston, there was a lot of expansion, so there was a lot of logging. People needed lumber. And the lumber industry has a byproduct called sawdust that's just kind of a nuisance. It needs to be gotten rid of. So this is just a free, abundant resource, I mean more or less free, that nobody was really looking at with any value. And somehow he stumbled on the idea of packing the ice in sawdust in the bottom of these ships, and it's got just enough insulation to preserve the ice. And he was able to start shipping ice, and the demand was crazy. Now there was a problem, the ice didn't last very long. But Frederick Tudor had another brilliant idea based on another abundant resource in places like Charleston and places like the Bahamas, which is seashells. They're everywhere, and people would often use them to make sort of concrete walls and embankments and things. And he figured out that if you put ice in these sheds and you build multiple layers with gaps for air in between of walls made of these seashells, it would insulate them, and you could have ice in a place like the Bahamas, brought down from Boston, that would last for 4 or 5 months in these sheds. It changed the world. Absolutely changed the world. Because it wasn't just ice for your Bahama mama, right? It wasn't just, this is fun, I have iced tea. It meant now food could be preserved. It meant people who were sick with malaria, people who had very high fevers, could be kept cooler, because the ice, the idea of turning a warm place, a place that Mother Nature has said this is warm, and saying, no, we want to make it cool. Now this is possible. And air conditioning and refrigeration and freezing, all the things that we know today, all eventually spun out step by step off of Frederick Tudor's high risk, eventually high reward undertaking. This crazy guy who was convinced he could bring ice from Boston down to the Caribbean. That's entrepreneurship. Now, entrepreneurship, it's not just a person, right? So when we think of an entrepreneur, what do you think of? Somebody who, what? Creates anything else, creates. Usually I think of someone who starts or owns a business. That's kind of a common definition of an entrepreneur. Now, if you want to say, like, as a career, an entrepreneur is probably someone who starts and owns a business. But entrepreneurship is a category of action. So let me ask you, are you a buyer or a seller? Are you a producer or a consumer? All the mumbles, I just get to pretend you said whatever I want. It's all blending together. You're both, right? It depends. Sometimes you're buying things, sometimes you're selling. Sometimes if you have a job, you're a producer. Sometimes you're a consumer. Because those are not types of people, they're categories of action. And that's what entrepreneurship is as well. It's a type of action. It's solving a problem in a new way, often using all existing pieces. It doesn't necessarily mean, inventing something new technologically. It can just mean a combination of things that already existed. I mean, Frederick Tudor didn't invent sawdust or seashells or ice or ships. He found a new combination. Okay, so entrepreneurship is a category of action. So we're all born with entrepreneurial ability. We all act entrepreneurially sometimes. We innovate. We do new things. It can be really small. And I'm going to give you some of those examples. So there are 3 key components of entrepreneurial action. So to describe those, I want to start with 3 key components of all kinds of action. Now let me see, if I walk, can you guys hear me still or no? Yeah? That's okay? All right, good. I'm a walker. I like to move around sometimes. I get all kinds of energy. So 3 key components of any human action. My favorite economist, Ludwig von Mises. Anybody ever heard of him? He's pretty obscure, but you should check him out. He's amazing. Ludwig von Mises is my favorite economist, and he defined all of economics, first of all, as the study of human action. And so he said, what are the preconditions to purposeful human action? Any kind of action. And he defined 3 conditions for action. First, discontentment. You're not going to act unless you are somehow dissatisfied with not acting, with where you are right now. I mean, I could have stayed there. I would not have moved here if there wasn't something that was making me unsatisfied with standing still, right? I had to have some form of discontentment. A vision of something better, so you have to be able to see an alternative. Because you can be unhappy and not act if you don't see any alternative to your discontentment. And then finally, a belief in your ability to get to that something better. So I may be, unhappy up in the cold north in the winter, and I may be able to see the lovely Bahamas, but if I don't believe that I have any way to get there, I'm still not going to act, right? So these are preconditions to all human action. Now, entrepreneurial action, or innovation, I'm going to take these three conditions, I'm going to kind of give them a little bit different label and a little bit different focus, but it's the same basic concept. I call it narrative, vision, and imagination. These are the preconditions to entrepreneurial action. Narrative, story, the stories we tell about the world we live in. Because keep in mind, every single moment except for this present moment only exists in story form. So you can't go back and visit the past, at least as far as we know, until somebody invents a time machine. So it's not a thing that you actually interact with. It's a story. It's a collection of memories, and those are woven into a kind of narrative arc. So narrative is the stories we tell about the world we live in, the problems, more or less of the past. So kind of the way things have always been done. In the case of Frederick Tudor, the story is you can't have ice in places that are warm. Now, most people would say that's just the way the world is. That's how it's always been. It's got to be that way. But he actually was discontent with that story. That was a problem to him. That made him unhappy. It bothered him. Didn't bother everybody, but that's a characteristic of an entrepreneur. They see a problem where other people often don't. Vision is really about looking around in the present and saying, what is in front of me now? What could be better? What opportunities are there? So narrative is about problems, vision is about opportunities, and imagination is kind of putting them together and seeing, I could solve this problem with this opportunity. If you were to put them on a time scale, past, present, future. The story you're telling this is something that humans deal with. It's warm, and you can't have a cold Bahama mama in the Bahamas because there's no ice. That's a problem. The present, you look around and say, well, we got all this ice up in Boston. We have all this sawdust. We have all these shells. And imagination, I could see a world in which I could bring the ice down here. But that's not enough. Even if you have those three things, even if you can identify problems and say the way things have always been done isn't good enough, even if you can look around you and identify opportunities in the present, say, interesting, we have these resources here, and you can imagine how they can be combined, you'll just be a great thinker. But to be an entrepreneur, it takes action as well. Narrative, vision, imagination, and action. That's an entrepreneur. So it's how you see the world, past, present, and future, and then what you do about that insight. There's a lot of brilliant, insightful people who will talk about trends and this and that, and oh, we can see this in the world. And that's great. Those are good thinkers. When you add action, that's when you get an entrepreneur. And that's the scariest part. Okay, let's walk through these a little bit in more detail, one by one. So narrative, the story we tell about the past and about problems. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you've got to start seeing problems everywhere. You have to be really discontent in some ways. Not in a way that makes you unhappy or angry, but when you do things, you should always be thinking, this isn't good enough. There's a way to do this better. I'm not content that for thousands of years people have said heavier than air flight is not possible. Humans are not meant to fly. No, that's a problem. Everyone else sees that as a reality. I see that as a problem to be solved. That's the first step. Start seeing those problems everywhere. And again, this starts when you're young. Let's take a baby. This baby's got a toy, right? It seems like, okay, the baby's got a toy. They'd be really happy. But the baby sees another toy. That's a weird-looking thing. It's from Minecraft, this computer game my son plays. And I don't know, it's supposed to be cute, but it looks kind of scary to me. Anyway, the baby sees this weird-looking thing up on a shelf. And it's always been on the shelf. That's where it is. It's a decoration. Now, you could just say, oh, that's just the way, this playroom that I'm in, it's got a decoration on the shelf. But this baby's an entrepreneur. No, that's a problem. That thing needs to be down here in my mouth, right? I need to be chewing on that thing, right? Okay? Seeing that as a problem. In the real world, now, I'm going to have to change this example because I hear You guys don't have Uber here. Has anybody ever heard of Uber? Okay, so you know what it is, so I can use that example. But we could use Airbnb as well. Do you have Airbnb down here? People rent out houses? Similar thing. So many people will see taxis and just say, what's wrong with taxis? I mean, if you asked anybody 10, 15 years ago, are taxis a problem? Most people would say, no. You need to get somewhere. You pay a taxi. You go to New York City. You hail a cab, and you go somewhere. But an entrepreneur sees a problem everywhere. They say, no. This is too expensive. Sometimes the cab drivers are rude. Sometimes you can't get one when you want it. This is a problem. It's inefficient. Or with Airbnb. Most people say hotels are fine. There's plenty of hotel rooms. You book a hotel. An entrepreneur says, no. There's not enough selection. There's not enough variety. There's not enough competition on price. That's a problem. Again, Frederick Tudor. There's not ice in the Bahamas. That's a problem. Vision. All right, so let's look around. That's the past. These are all these things that have always been. And we're going to say that that's not cool. That's not good enough. What's around right now? And especially, what might be different today than it was in the past? Maybe now, there's something unique about the time we live in now that allows us to solve a problem that everybody else thought was just a permanent feature of the world. So in the case of this baby, mom and dad bring home a new toy chest. A new element enters the scene. Interesting. That toy chest looks sort of familiar. It kind of looks like a step. And I've seen adults walk up steps before. Okay, this is a new element that enters the scene. This presents an opportunity. In the case of entrepreneur, with Uber, there's something interesting going on in the world. Everyone has a smartphone now, and these smartphones have GPS. People are on them all the time. Interesting. There's also a lot of people with cars that are driving around with 3 and 4 seats empty who don't have jobs maybe that they have to be at, and they have time, they have a car, and they've got this sort of unused asset. But nobody's going to just call a stranger and say, give me a ride. Or same with Airbnb. There's empty houses, but nobody wants to stay in a stranger's house. But there's something else that's emerged over the last decade. Rating systems online that have become pretty good and pretty reliable. People are used to rating everything from restaurants to books and products, and we've become accustomed to trusting people based on online ratings. 3 pre-existing things in the world that most people could just not really notice, but when you see taxis or hotels as a problem to be solved, you start to notice these trends and say, there's something here. I can combine the sawdust and the seashells and the ice. And imagination. Okay, let's take that toy chest. Let's stand on it. My photo editing shop skills are not very good. I tried to make the baby standing on it didn't work very well. So the baby is sort of hovering. The baby's jumping off of that's actually a really good vertical for that baby, right? Let's push the toy chest over and let's grab this. Now that may seem really simple, but when you consider, this is incredibly entrepreneurial. This baby has never seen anyone use a toy chest as a step before. This baby has seen people step on stairs, and the baby sees an object higher than she can reach, so she moves this object over and uses it for something other than what it was normally used for, not just to store toys. I'm going to stand on it. I'm going to reach that object. That's a new combination of resources to achieve a goal. That's an entrepreneurial action. And then we have Uber, or we have Airbnb. Let's put these pieces together. Let's let people request a car or rent out a room in their home online. We can have a rating system. We're going to combine these things. There wasn't any real massive technological breakthrough with either of these companies. They were using existing resources. But the reason they were able to do this was because they saw problems where no one else saw problems. And they saw underutilized resources where no one else saw underutilized resources. And they had the imagination to envision a world where you combine these things to solve that problem. But how many people have those great ideas? Surprisingly, a lot. Ideas, it can be a challenge to start to think this way, but once you do, you notice that ideas are relatively cheap. Execution is rare. That's when you combine action, and that's when you go from an insightful person to an entrepreneur. So how do you, this is the hard part, because everyone's like, okay, I've got ideas, I think I have ideas, but what do I do next? Have you guys ever felt that way? Have you ever had an idea for a business or some small innovation? Anybody? I know some of you have. And then you just don't know what to do. You kind of get stuck. Now, I can absolutely relate to that. I had all kinds of ideas for a long time. Most of them were pretty bad. But you don't really know until you try them how bad they are. But so many of them, I just didn't know, what am I even supposed to do? What's step one? So I would say this. If you have an idea, try to narrow down the scope of what you need to do to bring it about. Rather than thinking about, okay, I've got this massive idea, I've got to do 1,000,000 things, and then you add up those 1,000,000 things, you say, well, that's going to take money. I guess I'll need to raise money. I don't know how to raise money. I guess I can't do anything. And you kind of talk yourself into being stuck. Break it down a lot smaller than that. If you have an idea, do one thing. If you take away anything from this talk, take this away. Do one thing every single day to move that idea forward somehow. Just one thing, every day, 7 days a week. Now, some days you may do a big thing or you may do a lot of things. But at least do one thing to keep moving your idea forward. And you will be amazed how many things you can do without waiting for permission or funding from someone else or something outside of yourself. You're just waiting and hoping just happens to you or someone notices you and comes along. You can keep propelling something forward one tiny bit at a time if you keep that momentum going. If you ever find yourself saying, I've got this business idea, but I'm in waiting mode, I'm waiting for something to happen, that's a really dangerous place to be. That probably means you're never going to get this thing done. There's always got to be something, some small thing you can do next. Just one thing every day. And if you compare that, because you're like, well, okay, I can come up with a name, and then I can come up with a logo. I guess that's one thing, but that's not really that valuable. Then I can go talk to some people, potential customers, and survey them for an hour and get a little information. That's not that valuable. True, none of those things are going to get you off the ground, but it's better than waiting and saying the really valuable thing I need to do, I have to wait for somebody else to give me permission or to give me funding or to give me something. Then you're in this waiting game, and it's sort of a disempowering mindset too, because you're waiting on external permission of some kind instead of getting yourself in the mode of creating. Now, the one thing each day is also surprisingly powerful. You guys know about compounding interest, right? So you've probably heard before, what would you rather have, $1 million or a penny doubled each day for a month? You ever heard that question? So yeah, this is the chart. If you took the $1 million, you'd have $1 million, the green line down there, and you'd get it day 1, and you'd still have $1 million, day 31. Depending upon how long the month is, you can see if you take a penny doubled every day, it's a really bad deal until you get down to about day 27 or 28. And now all of a sudden, you end with, 8 or 11 or whatever, as much as $11 million if it's a 31-day month. That's the power of that compounding. So if you think, if I can make myself better 1% every day or 0.5%, if I can make my business idea just 0.5% more valuable every single day, what happens? That starts to compound. That's actually pretty powerful. It's that momentum. Okay, but you're like, all right, Isaac, that's cool, but I don't have an idea at all. I'm still interested in entrepreneurship. I want to innovate. I want to do cool things, but I don't actually have an idea. I would say that's actually all right, because the ideas part is less rare than the action part. So if you can train yourself to be someone who knows how to take action, you can actually turn that action-taking bias into a mechanism for generating ideas. You can actually turn creativity into a discipline. Do you guys ever feel like creativity, you just sort of wait for the moment to strike, and then you get a creative inspiration, and then you go, write a song or start a business or something? We kind of have this feeling like creativity is just something that sort of happens to us. I don't believe that. You do have moments of inspiration, certainly, but you can turn it into a discipline. You can do the same principle. You can do one thing every day, even if you don't have a specific idea to apply it to. There's a guy named James Altucher who I like to read, and he has a podcast as well. And he has this practice where he writes down 10 ideas every day. Well, 10's a little bit much for me, so I'll do 3. Or just write down 3 ideas every day, and there's no rules about how good or bad they are. And if you do that every day as a discipline, you will actually turn yourself into an idea machine. You'll find most of them will be terrible, but every once in a while you'll get a really good one, and you'll start to get more good ones. And you'll start to train your brain to see, to have narrative vision and imagination. When you're forced to come up with 3 ideas every morning and write them down, you have to start thinking of some crazy stuff because you run out pretty quick. And then all of a sudden it changes the way you see. And you can actually turn yourself into an idea machine. So for me, I faced a point in my life. I had a job that was really cool. I really liked it. But I'm kind of like a restless person. And it took me a long time to figure out that restlessness was entrepreneurship. I like to create things and build things. And it took me a long time to realize that's really, like, I'm not going to be fulfilled until I'm doing that. So I was restless, and I knew I kind of wanted to do something, but I did not have a specific idea. So a friend of mine gave me a challenge. He said, you've got this creative urge, you don't know what to do with it, just create. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? What am I going to create? He's like, blog every single day. Publish a blog post every day. And I'm like, well, what's that going to do? Just writing a bunch of random thoughts, you know? He's like, trust me, creating as a discipline every day, it's going to unlock a part of your brain that's currently dormant. I said, all right, fine. I'm restless. I need an outlet for my energy. I'll do it. So I started blogging every day, 7 days a week, and I gave myself 6 months. I'm going to do this for 6 months. About 5.5 months in, I went for a walk one day, and an idea out of nowhere popped into my head. And I was like, this is different than some of the ideas I've had. I think this is actually a really good idea. And, I got ahead of myself. We'll come back to that in a second. And the idea was for the company which I now run. This was a little over 3 years ago. Now, I can tell you this is not an exaggeration. Blogging every day literally and directly led to creating and launching this company. I would not have been able to do that if I didn't just start creating something every day, as silly as a blog post. Sometimes it was only a few sentences. But I got this ability, I took pride in the fact that every day, no matter what, I delivered. I shipped a blog post, I published it. And it turned me into someone who, because I always needed material. You run out of stuff to say. So I started to see the world differently. I saw everything as like, is there something interesting I can draw out of this experience? What could I write about this? Because I got to write a blog post tomorrow or today. And all of a sudden, you start to see things differently. Now, it can be blogging. It can be writing down 3 ideas every day. But I would encourage you, if you want to be entrepreneurial and you're interested in that, but you don't have a specific idea to go after, if you do, work on it every day. But if you don't, give yourself some kind of challenge. Blog every day if you can. Write down 3 ideas a day. Come up with something else. So you're doing something every day that turns creativity into a discipline. Now, I got the order wrong here, but don't do stuff you hate. So this is the other thing I was going to say. If you don't know what to do, because you don't have an idea, the 2 things that I recommend are, 1, don't do things you hate first. If you're doing things that are boring and dull and soul-sucking and making you really miserable and unhappy, find the fastest way to stop. Because anything that's sucking your energy out and your desire to live and be happy, those things are going to kill you. Those are going to kill your creative energy. So don't do stuff you hate. Now, once you stop doing things you hate, everything else is fair game. Now, how many of you are like, I don't know what I want to do with my life? Anybody? You guys all know exactly what you want to do. Like, you don't, like, any of you wonder, I don't really know, like, what kind of profession do I want to go into? What kind of stuff do I want to do? If you guys aren't worried at all about that, I'm really surprised, because I still am. I still don't know what I want to do with my but I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think approaching, whether an entrepreneur or not, what am I going to do? What's my calling? Follow your passion. What's my passion? That's a lot of stress to figure out. And frankly, what you're most likely to be doing in 10 or 20 years probably doesn't even exist yet. Probably doesn't even exist yet. Technology and innovation are moving faster and faster. There's going to be new opportunities that didn't exist. I mean, today, you can be a computer programmer. 20 years ago, that was incredibly rare. So you wouldn't even know how to prepare. So instead of trying to find the one thing, again, if you know what it is, go after it. But instead of feeling all this stress, I've got to pick my one thing, my one calling, my one entrepreneurial endeavor, don't worry about that. Just don't do things you hate. And if you don't hate it, it's fair game. Try a lot of stuff. Experiment with a lot of stuff. Take action. Create things. So I want to end with this feeling that we have, that I touched on before. We tend to feel like, okay, Isaac, that's all great, but I'm not an expert. I don't know anything about coding or smartphone apps or, starting a business. I'm just a student. I'm just whatever. I'm not an expert. Good. When it comes to entrepreneurship, that's actually an advantage. Most of the innovations come from outsiders. The creators of Uber were not in the transportation industry. They were not experts on transportation. Creators of Airbnb were not in the hospitality industry. They were not experts on the hotel system. Frederick Tudor wasn't an expert in anything. He was just a guy who wanted some ice in his tea. And he was a little bit obsessed with making it happen. He was not an expert on refrigeration and insulation. He was not an expert on ships, on any of the components of his business. He wasn't an expert. The Wright brothers were not experts of aerodynamics and physics. In fact, the Royal Scientific Society of London issued all kinds of papers about how heavier than air flight was not possible. All the experts were so smart that they knew all the reasons why you shouldn't be able to build an airplane. So not being an expert was an advantage. The naivete and ignorance of an outsider is often an advantage. Those outsiders are the ones that see things that everyone else says is normal because they've all studied the reasons why they exist and say, yes, this is the story about why this exists. It's perfectly normal. Outsiders come in and they don't know all that. So they say, this isn't normal. This looks like a problem. I could make it better. And everything can be made better. Nothing's ever fully solved. Even the story I told Uber, Airbnb, they haven't solved it. You can probably find a way to do those same things that's better than Uber or Airbnb. That's what's great about innovation. It's continuous. It's an ongoing process. Everything is potentially a problem. So don't wait and feel like I've got to become an expert. I've got to really understand this. Learn to see problems the way things have been done and see everything as a potential problem. That's exciting. Every time I go somewhere, I'm in line waiting for a sandwich at the airport, and it takes 5 minutes, and I'm immediately thinking, there's got to be some innovation here. This 5 minutes wasted. There's something can be done better. Maybe it's the checkout process. Maybe it's the way they make the sandwich. I don't know. See problems everywhere. See present opportunities. Look around and say, what exists in the world today that's kind of a new thing that maybe wasn't always here that might open up possibilities to do things differently? See future possibilities. How can I combine these things? And act. Become someone who regularly acts, who can create as a discipline. So my question to you is, entrepreneurship is this amazing driving force. I'll talk about later this afternoon just how amazing and powerful it is. It is the source of the wealth and the raising standard of living that we have now compared to 50, 100, 200 years ago. If entrepreneurs are innovating and creating new things, why not you? And I think that's a fair question to ask. Why not me? There's no reason it can't be you. Thanks, guys. Happy to take questions. We have microphones on the sides here, so if anybody has any questions, just hop right out. Don't be shy.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just interested to know, you touched on, you just mentioned you were blogging and it led you to start your business. What exactly is your business all about?
Yes, thank you. I love talking about my business. So see how I insert that in there so that people ask me the question? So I have a company called Praxis. Oh, look at that. It's an apprenticeship program. So young people that, right now it's only in the United States, unfortunately, but it'll be coming soon. Young people that want to work at a startup and potentially be an entrepreneur, but they're not quite ready. They come into Praxis and we give them a 3-month boot camp, really intensive professional boot camp where they build a website. They learn a lot of sort of basic digital skills, not like really intense computer science skills, but kind of taking advantage of creating a personal brand. And then we place them with a startup where they apprentice for 6 months. And at the end of it, they get a full-time job from the startup. And so what we're doing, we just sort of realized that for so many people, they're spending a lot of time and money on schools and coming out without really any skills that businesses were looking for. And this is a big problem, especially if people are kind of wandering through college and they don't really know what they're there for. And so with all these businesses, we're saying, I'm trying to hire people and I can't find it. Even the people that have degrees, they don't have the skills. And all these young people in the United States are spending $50,000, $100,000 or more on college and going deep into debt and coming out, and they still don't really have the ability to get a job. There's 82% of college seniors in the United States don't have a job lined up upon graduation. 62% either are unemployed or they're working in a job that doesn't require a degree anyway. So you're paying $100,000 to work in a job you could have had without a degree. And so we thought, whether you have a degree or not, there's got to be a better way to get people the skills and experience they need to get a job, especially entrepreneurial type people who want to work with other entrepreneurs and maybe go launch a business of their own. And so they pay us $12,000. They come through the program. They earn $14,000 through the program. So they actually make money. And then they walk away with a full-time job and the skills that are directly relevant to starting a company. So we've got people doing this instead of college altogether, or as a gap year, or after they graduate. But that's the nature of the company. I had worked with students for almost a decade, and I had just sort of seen that there was a gap that a lot of schools, not all, certainly not College of the Bahamas Business School, but that a lot of schools were missing. Yes?
Good morning. Besides Facebook and social media, how else did you mass market your business and got it out there?
Yeah, so what are other marketing channels? Specifically for any business in general, or specifically for, well, I'll just answer it both ways. So when it comes to marketing, and I don't pretend to be a marketing expert, but it's very, very dependent upon who your target market is. That's probably the single most important thing to define and understand, is who you're trying to sell to. Because there's a tendency when you create something to want to be everything to everyone and to want to sell to everyone. And everyone you tell about your idea, especially when you're not asking them to pay you, if you're just asking their opinion, what do you think? Oh, that's amazing. I would love that. So you think you've got to sell to everybody, which is probably not going to work, but it's going to cost you a ton to try to market to everyone. So the more narrowly you can define your market. So for us at Praxis, we thought, okay, if we can capture 2 really small, tiny niche markets and really dominate those, then we can sort of add to those markets little by little. And this is a really common approach. So take Airbnb. All they started with was apartment owners in New York City, period. That's all they went after. And they actually went door to door. Something that's not scalable. They couldn't do that now, go door to door everywhere in the country and saying, hey, would you like to list your house on Airbnb? But that was their best marketing plan to start with. Then once they had an established market, they could do other things. So with Praxis, we looked at students who are very passionate about liberty and free markets, like I know many of you are, because they sort of automatically see that there are different ways to do things. They're willing to sort of buck the status quo. And then we looked at students who were homeschooled as high schoolers, which is a pretty big thing in the United States because they're already taking a non-traditional educational path, so they're more open to these things. And they're such small groups. They have conferences and events, so we started with a lot of on-the-ground, in-person marketing to those very small audiences. Now that we're starting to grow, we're doing a lot of Facebook stuff, ads on Facebook. We're doing podcast sponsorships. Apparently, we have to somehow figure out Snapchat because that's what all the kids are using these days, but I don't understand it at all, so. Great question, though. I would just say define your market as narrowly as possible and start with a really small niche that you can, if you can own one niche, you can build on that. Other question?
You're very inspiring and phenomenal.
Thank you.
It reminds me of, I don't know if you've heard of a pastor that we had, Dr. Miles Monroe. A lot of the things that you said remind me of him. And, you know, I follow him, a member of the church, and, you know, he often would say that we were all created for a purpose, and that, you know, even he himself, he said, I'm the solution to the problem. I'm the solution. I don't look at things as problems. I look at it as being solution-oriented. And you said similar words, you know, pursue your passion, pursue what you like, you know, because whatever you like and you're mad about is like you are the solution to it.
Yes.
You know, we can see examples in yourself, we can see examples in Martin Luther King. Hey, he hated injustice, and he became an answer or a leader in the civil rights movement. Okay? You name it, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook, they saw problems that they created solutions for. So my question to you is though, is but suppose like in the Bahamas, we're in a small country. I have a sister living in Washington, D.C., my partner lives in the USA. And we often hear that the U.S. is a land of opportunity. And to keep it real, which I tend to do, we like have a brain drain. A lot of Bahamians, and even some of these college students, when they go off into the big world, they don't come back, okay? Because it seems stifling, a stifling kind of market or mindset or culture. So even though I've heard, you know, how you outline all the steps, narrative vision, take action, how do you really get to the next level when you have wonderful, great ideas, but your culture, the mindset, the environment kind of stifles it from coming into fruition?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm glad somebody asked that. Yeah. I can tell you guys this is a very real. All right. I'm going to say something that is probably going to be unpopular with many of you. If the biggest problem is where you live, move. I mean it. If you can, find any way, if the biggest problem is where you are, is stifling you. Remember when I said don't do stuff you hate? If you're in an environment that's stifling you, find a new environment. Really. And I know there are so many of you who love and are dedicated to making the Bahamas a better environment. If that's what you love and that's what you're dedicated to, do it. If you are one who that's your mission, that's what gets you going, solving that problem, do it. But for those of you who have a specific thing you want to do, and whether it's the family you're with, the friends you're around, have you ever heard that you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with? That's a really powerful truth. The people you're around, the environment you're in, if those are things holding you back, you are not obligated to stay somewhere that's making you miserable and stifling your dream, if that's the solution. It may not be. Maybe what you need to do is find a way around those problems right here. I'll give you I can't answer the specific question because I don't know the specific challenges you guys face here in the Bahamas. I can give you a quick story of my own. So when I first had the idea for this company, I had a business model where there was no tuition, it would be free for the participants, and then the businesses that they would work with would pay Praxis for us to send them this great talent. And I was all excited, this was my whole model, And then I did the thing that I hate the most, which is, look into the legal requirements and all this government hoops that you have to jump through for every business. And I found that the Department of Labor in the United States has basically made it illegal to work for free, except for there's like certain circumstances. But for the most part, if we were to send these participants to a business and they were to work there unpaid, which is the original model, that would have been illegal. So the business I had, the big innovation I had, was illegal. The government would not let me do it. I would get shut down. This is my big roadblock. So I am crushed. And I don't like regulation or red tape. I like freedom. I get pretty passionate about it. I was pissed. I was. I could have used a couple skies. I keep forgetting what they're called. So I called my brother, and he's an accountant. And I said, it's over. The whole business model. Oops. I can't do it. It's illegal. He's like, what do you mean? I explained it to him. He just started laughing. Now, he's an entrepreneur himself, incredibly successful. But he started as an accountant, like preparing people's tax returns. And if you know much about the taxes in the United States, they're so complex. You can do the same tax return 3 times and you'll get a different result every time. It's all so he's very used to laws and regulations all being sort of, they're always negotiable, right? Not like in a shady way. At least I hope not, because he used to do my taxes. He just started laughing. He said, Isaac, good. He said, that blockade that you think is stopping you, that's why no one else has done this. Because when they ran into it, they said it's not possible. They stopped. He said there's always a way around. There's always a way. That's what entrepreneurship is. Uber, what they were doing was kind of illegal. Sort of. Because to drive a car, you had to have a taxi medallion. But Uber found a way around it by saying we're not actually selling car services illegally. We just have an app that's connecting one person to another. And they worked around the law. And in some cities, they actually, in Charleston, where I'm from, they tried to shut Uber down to protect the taxi cartel. And Uber said to all their drivers, go ahead, just keep driving. Every time they pull you over, we'll pay the fine. And they just kept doing it. And eventually the city realized they weren't going to win this one. And they stopped. So I would just encourage you, if you ever find yourself, you're like, I have a great idea, I have a great innovation, but government won't let me, or my lack of funds won't let me, or this won't let me. Don't be the person who's stopped by that. There's always a way. Whether you want to work around it, smash through it, burrow under it, or escape the place where you are altogether to a place that will let you act on your idea. Find a way. If it's burning inside you, there is a way. You can find it. I can't tell you what that way is. I'm not smart enough. But if you have an idea that you're passionate about, you will find a way. You'll find a workaround. Oh, and by the way, we did find a workaround for Praxis. It was pretty easy, oddly enough. I didn't think of it at the time. Instead of people coming to the program for free and working for free, and the business is paying us, participants pay us tuition, they go and work, and the businesses pay them. So basically, the businesses are paying them to pay us. Everything essentially is the same. It still equals free for them, but it just gets routed through one extra step. A little more inconvenient, same end result. Never would have thought of that, but it was right in front of me. So you can find a way. Thank you so much, guys. I appreciate it.